Rahul, can you hear us? I can hear, but it's echoing.
Now I think it's okay.
Okay.
No, I think they can hear you.
Still echoing, guys. Still echoing.
Hello. Yeah, hello. Rahul, can you hear us?
Yeah. No, we're good now.
Okay. Yeah. Now I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. They say humor is the key in timing. Yeah. So when I was sort of packing my bags yesterday to come to Calcutta, I saw this news item which said that petrol and diesel prices have gone up. And this session is about the common man. So I was reading this, and the next line caught my eye. You know, it was about the timing of my visit. You know, petrol, diesel prices have gone up, and a big blow to the common man. Yeah. So somehow it was almost like the stars were telling me to pack my bags and quickly leave for the airport. So that's what I did, and that's why I'm here. Thank you so much, Rahul and Unny sir, for coming here.
Welcome.
Yeah. My first question, Rahul. For someone like me who has a very shallow understanding of cartooning, for me, cartooning equal to make fun of someone, right? So obviously I'm wrong. That's a very shallow understanding. Can you sort of educate me in terms of, you know, what is the deeper meaning behind a cartooning? Why would we do a cartoon? What is the significance? What's the importance? Why can't I just put that in plain text in newspaper font? And
so I think, you know, Unny sir, I think would be the best person actually in some ways, because he is the guy. But if I can give a slightly outside view to why I respect hugely a man like Unny and a man like Jayant Rane, who does our Amul hoardings, or Ponappa, or Morparya, or the great RK Laxman, because they had a gift, Balaji. They had a gift of being able to truly, the concept of less is more, of saying it with a small, just a doodle. A doodle says so much more than a photograph, because you can show multi expressions in a cartoon. So when you say don't make a cartoon of yourself, there's no doubt that you're telling somebody don't make an ass of yourself. But when it comes to doodling, sketching, cartooning, the ability to be able to get multi expressions and multi emotions, and then you're into the larger aspect, Balaji, of satire, right? You're able to say so little. The whole concept of cartooning equals minimalism, and minimalism is about humor in minimalism. So in short, that's my, as I say, humble view of what I think cartooning is.
Absolutely, sir. Sir, your views?
I think it has a historical context also, because newspaper is a popular art. I mean, it's a popular medium, and cartoons came into newspapers as a popular art. It had a not a very hoary, respectable history. It had a history of strongly one-sided political propaganda. Nothing wrong with it. That is how cartooning came into existence. When it migrated to newspapers, it had a purpose which we were talking about, minimalism. And like a headline, it can encapsulate a lot, draw the attention of the reader to something, express a strong opinion, even slightly offensively, without, I mean, the general convention in a democratic society is that you don't quarrel too much with a cartoonist. You are considered a person without humor. So
Yeah,
these are functional things that
absolutely.
So can I just say one more thing, just feeding off what Unny sir was saying, Balaji. I think the greatest thing about cartooning is the fact that you can make a comment through humor and through pictures, because at the end of the day, because a cartoon isn't real, because the drawing of the minister or the drawing of the perpetrator or the drawing of the villain has a funny angle to it, the receiver doesn't take offense. And I think that's the brilliance. And I don't think I respect anybody more than cartoonists, because they're able to, within a second, make that devastating statement through humor. So yeah.
Absolutely. So coming to, of course, Mr. RK Laxman, one of the biggest pioneers and the legend whom we know, he always had this common man, right? I think whom he created in the 1950s, in the early 1950s. Now, having known him and having been in the industry, a veteran yourself, what is the grounds of construct of a common man? Why the dhoti kurta? Why is he an old man, not a young man? Can you just share a little bit of insights?
No, Laxman hasn't shared any details except about it's very characteristic of him that he can speak at length without sharing anything with you. But he will tell you how exactly it came into being. That he does. The early days of Indian cartooning, Shankar, Laxman, they showed politics as something that's being played out in public, because we got our democracy through public agitation, public movements, and so on. The public, members of the public, Indians from various parts of the country, had to be represented in the large cartoons. Those days, cartoons were printed very big, 4 or 5 columns. Those newspapers were also large, if you remember. Now the newspapers have shrunk. There they would add a typical Punjabi, let's say a Sardarji, who looks like a Sardarji, a South Indian, various people from various parts of the country to represent India. And this crowd would be onlookers. In the background, in the foreground, you will have these major politicians playing out the politics. So it's almost staged. This is from where Laxman found it difficult, because it's also an art form where you have a deadline. How many people can you draw into the background? So he says it was not deliberate. Slowly he found some people leaving. And finally, this odd man in an odd costume stayed back. That's the common man.
Excellent. What sort of a person was Laxman? Humorous, like his creation, serious? You spent time with him. Just walk us through.
Yeah, I have met him quite a few times, but most of the time we were talking shop. He was certainly a serious person at heart. He took his work very seriously. He probably would be among the greatest workaholics of India. For 68 years, 6 hours a weekday, he shut himself up in the Times of India corner office of his. Nobody could see him. So the country is one of the most eminent people, virtually underground for 6 hours of the day, working day. He was like that. He worked with a lot of diligence, kept his time. He was the earliest to come to work at 8:15 or 8:20. His black ambassador would turn in. He came to the office before anyone else came to the Times of India. He was the first to come. He would start work. Nobody could go into his office till about 2 o'clock, 3. He rarely used a watch. So as he got closer to the deadline, his secretary would tell him hourly, Sab, it's 1 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock, like that kind of a thing. So some kind of a countdown happening as he approached deadline. He worked like that every day of his working life. He was very, very serious, but when we chat with him in the evenings, he's very funny. He's a great mimic also. Excellent mimic.
Okay. Rahul, you also created a common personality in 1965, the common girl of Amul. She was there in most of the ads, in most of the topicals, as you call it. What was the difference between the common little girl and RK Laxman's common man? Similarities, differences, how would you stack them up?
I think, first of all, I just want to say that I didn't create the girl in 65, otherwise I'd have been 102 right now. Right? So that was, and there would be like a serious Botox thing going on. No, so basically, in many ways, the Lakshman's common man and my father and Eustace Fernandez's Butterly girl sort of coexisted for many years of their lives together, right? One of the big differences is that the common man was the brainchild of a cartoonist who was primarily political, primarily commented on what the common man was going through, and was, I suppose you could say, it was on the masthead of the Times of India. The difference, Balaji, is that the butter girl is representing a brand, right? So that's a big difference, is that every sort of tagline that we think of, every subject we think of, has to resonate with perhaps not what the brand wants to say, but so much about what's reflected in India across politics, across Bollywood, across sports, across football, across international affairs as well. So pretty much the common man was always somebody who never spoke. If I remember, he was always observing. He was always sort of an eavesdropper on what the real problem was. And so he wasn't really the common man. He was the common listener to what the common man was really saying. Because I never got a sense of what was he actually thinking. He was just, I suppose, a sort of interested bystander. That's the way. The Amul girl, in her own way, I suppose she's a commentator, but she's also a conscience. She's also a cheerleader. She's a celebrator. Today, out of the RK Laxman time, we live now in a world of popular culture. What's fascinating is I'd like to know how the great man would have functioned in a Twitter era. The common man in those years never spoke. Today, with social media, the common man has a chance to speak. The common man, in fact, is speaking so much that very often the noise factor is as much as it is, So I think the beautiful thing about the work that we do, because Mr. Laxman sort of had a cartoon every day of his life, we get out a normal topical every 2 days, let's say. What is fascinating is that I'd love to know how Dr. RK Laxman would have functioned in an era today where there are other media. Today's kids are not reading the newspapers anymore. How would he have reached the millennial? How would he have tackled the way that politics is handling? How it's unfolding in various ways. And it's just sad in many ways that that the common man today does not exist anymore.
Yeah. Sorry, Rahul. Sorry, you were saying something. Yeah.
No, just about legacy, basically. What happens.
So just hazarding a guess. The common man of RK Laxman was very quiet, never spoke a word. His wife was very vocal and aggressive and speaking all the time. So to Rahul's point, is it that the lady would have taken a slightly front seat because she has to be speaking these days? Based on the changes in the social milieu that Rahul mentioned, is it possible that the wife could have become the more common among the common couple?
Rahul Saab is a point, but I have a slight disagreement purely on the basis of experience.
Sure.
You find, last 5-10 years, whenever an old vintage Laxman cartoon is tweeted by somebody, many of his cartoons have a shelf life that has outlasted its time. especially the pocket cartoons. They are drawn on a trend rather than on a news event always, on a news trend. And some of these trends last. So his cartoons get tweeted, old cartoons. Then I find that he gets more attention than any contemporary Indian cartoonist.
Yeah.
And when the common man figures, people swear by him. And I looked at the kind of readers. I mean, are they old people who are reacting to it? People of his age, people who were there when he was drawing? No, lots of youngsters, lots of new readers. He is picking up new readers on the web. Probably if somebody does it more strategically, he would probably outdo all of us on the web.
In fact, in an era where there is so much of noise factor, maybe the silent man gets heard more.
Yeah, I have, this is, I don't know, it's too early to say this, but it's an interesting thing that's happening on the web.
Very
People can do with some silence, people can do with an occasional silence, people can do with some uncluttering at the end of the day.
So can I just say one thing, Balaji?
Sure.
I'm not for a second saying that RK Laxman is not extremely valid today. In fact, I think that he was ahead of his time a lot. And more importantly, what is fascinating and humorous about this country is that the stuff that he was talking about still exists. So today your fuel, anything, I mean, anything you wish, he commented on, which is rising onion prices, fuel prices, the beauty of manholes on the road, of potholes. Those are issues that 40 years later still exist. And so today, a man like RK Laxman would never be outdated. He just said the issues that he talked about are still burning today, you know. So was he ahead of his time? I think he was just extremely contemporary, and which is why Unny is right, and that today most of his cartoons will still have resonance because the issues still remain as burning as they ever were before.
Absolutely.
You know, there was this very interesting cartoon which says that this person is reading and he's telling the shopkeeper that inflation has gone up. So add 5 or 10 rupees to the commodity price. Okay, before. And that's amazing because he was actually talking about what was going to happen in Zimbabwean economy many years later, in the hyperinflated Zimbabwean economy, where people would pick up something at the store. By the time they reach the cash counter price has gone up by 10%. So in a way, he was actually sort of seeing the future, to Rahul's point and what you were saying.
Yeah, when future gets escalated to this extent, I mean, a cartoon becomes merely a factual statement.
Absolutely, something like the court jester. Okay,
you don't exaggerate. You think you're exaggerating,
but you're not.
Like, I mean, you're not.
You're not. You're actually speaking the truth, way ahead of anyone. Yeah. Absolutely, Rahul. You always believe that there is no one India. There are 5 Indias, maybe even 10 Indias, right? And you had to be very topical, very specific, very territorial to that. And that's always what has worked well for you. But for RK Laxman, it was always one generic India in his cartoons. And how did both work? Both worked extremely well. Tell us a little bit. I mean, first we'll go to Rahul, then come to you, sir. Whatever.
So to me, what fascinates me is that, first of all, the beauty about what RK Laxman did was, cartoonists I admire greatly because not only do they cartoon, but they also write their cartoons. So it's talking about 2 gifts. One is, of course, the gift of cartoon. One is, of course, the gift of what is in that speech bubble, right? What is fascinating to me was he wrote in English. So when I talk about the 5 Indias today for Amul, I'd say 10 or 15 or 20 Indias, is that India has become incredibly localized. You know, so I get criticized when I say that perhaps in some ways the national language of the country is English, because I would say that English is spoken in many of the states that Hindi is not, you know. So to that extent, I've always said that South India within itself is 5 different Indias, because Andhra Pradesh talks a different language from Kerala, which talks a different language from Tamil Nadu. You then have the East, which has got its own sense of language, and you've got the North, and you've got so in some ways, the beauty of RK Laxman was because he took common issues. It didn't matter where you were from. The fact is that there are potholes in every part of the country. onion prices are an issue anywhere in the country. So I think the beauty about what he did was he was able to, within that tiny little column, whatever, 5, 7, 10, he was able to reflect what the common man in India was thinking, and managed to do it because he was stating facts. But the beauty about cartooning and the beauty about satire is that you could be as poker faced as you want, but the people are getting a joke out of it because they're suffering through it. And the beauty is that the cartoonist is able to reflect suffering. He's able to reflect on what a country is going through. And that is the brilliance of, I think, and to me, Unny sir is as much of a genius as RK Laxman was, because
Absolutely.
and he's revering the RK Laxman. But to me, Unny is a man I look at every morning, and he's even more minimalistic. So I appreciate the great man's humility, but I raise my hat to you, sir, because you're even more minimalistic than most cartoonists I know. In a smaller
I'm
space.
honored. I'm honored. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So yeah.
Two of the greatest political cartoonists, Mr. Unny and Mr. RK Laxman, yet very different in styles, because you have caricatured very specific politicians like MGR, Kejriwal, Sanjay Gandhi. Whereas Laxman's politicians were always a generic face.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever caricatured anyone specific, or am I wrong?
You are not quite right there, because Laxman was a very good caricaturist to begin with. And he has done plenty of caricatures, not only of politicians, the entire Bollywood. That is how the Southern India knew Laxman first, through the illustrations he did for his brother's books, Swami and Friends Guide and so on, Malgudi Days. Also for the caricatures he did for Filmfare.
Okay.
Filmfare used to come to the South. Times of India had no Southern edition. We all caught up with Times of India when it came to Chennai much later.
Can I butt in here a little bit?
Sure.
Again, I'm going to go back to Unny, because I had forgotten that RK Laxman kept his politicians neutral. So there is a very big difference, I think, between the cartoonist and the satirist. So the cartoonist, I think, is somebody who's sort of, the statement that he's making is perhaps a larger issue than the people he's showing. Right? I think what Unny does is, perhaps, may I say that I think he's taking a little more of a chance and risking a little bit more, because the moment you get into actually satirizing and characterizing a politician, you're actually making fun of him. And when I say making fun of him, I don't know how Unny sir feels, but I think we're a very tricky country, where it's something I've always thought about, is that do our people really have humor? Are we a funny people? Do we laugh at ourselves? Are we good at laughing at somebody else, not necessarily laughing at ourselves, And I think the caricaturist or the cartoonist or the satirist who actually takes faces head on.
Yeah.
Because what you're really doing with great cartoonists is that you're looking for that funny thing, right? Why was Nixon such a beautiful person? Because that nose, it's like I love politicians who you can cartoon easily, because it's so much more fun to. I don't know how Unny sir feels.
Even when he kept it generic, I mean, sometimes Laxman had a lot of run-ins with Morarji Desai. I think he wanted to stop his, did you face these pushbacks from the politicians? And what about you, Rahul? You've kept away from religion. You've made a statement very clearly, but when you've satirized any politicians, have you faced any pushback? My question to both of you, can you please share your respective experiences?
I think I have not.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, please, Unny. I want to know whether.
No, I haven't faced any. I have often got letters. The office has got letters. The newspaper has got letters saying that nobody will say that I don't quite look like that. You don't draw me like that, and so on. I mean, people have said that to my editor in person. But that, of course, that's a compliment to a caricaturist. I mean,
Yeah.
if the target disowns you, then you've got it right. I mean, the point is, that doesn't matter. But there are politicians who like cartoons. In fact, some of the most political of politicians. I have not had the fortune to work with Nehruvian days. Indira Gandhi also. I came during the last days of Indira Gandhi. Rajiv liked cartoons by and large. Narasimha Rao liked cartoons, not just about Indian politics, about even world politics, because he was a thinking politician. And he would sometimes use Indian cartoons strategically, frame them up and put them up in halls where he has a meeting with the American ambassador.
Oh, wow.
Not one cartoon, many cartoonists he would use, and he would tell them that we are a democratic country, and this is the easiest way of telling them we are a democratic country. If you are trying to sell a policy to me, I have to sell it to my people.
Okay.
So the best way of telling
Very
that to a
interesting.
foreign delegation is to show them that this is what our cartoonists are doing to us. He used to do it very well. From Kashmir, he had collected cartoons which we did on American, this instrument of accession business, when that was in the news. I did a cartoon, many did cartoons, very pungent cartoons saying, what about how did America become America? I mean, where was the instrument of accession in the locals, the natives? Natives were just run over and the place was taken over. That kind of a cartoon. He used those things. He's a thinking politician. The world over, cartoons are used like that in mature democracies. American diplomats have told me that when they get posted out to a new country, the basic primer they are given is, the first thing is you look at the cartoons of that country. That will tell you more about the country. If the country doesn't have cartoons at all, fine. I mean, that also makes a statement, but there's no democracy there. And nothing at all. So if there is a certain kind of democracy, if you want to find out what kind of a democracy it is, then you will find the same thing. You will find the cartoonist treating a person in the face, non-generically. Then that's a more mature democracy than a place where you have only generic, oblique comments on politics.
Excellent insight. Excellent insight. The fact that politicians can actually use cartoons to project how democratic their country is. That's a sign of a mature democracy. Rahul, your experiences on any pushbacks or any time that you might have faced?
I think for the most part, because our commentator is a little girl with a bow tie and blue hair and a polka dot. I think politicians have been easily able to take what we're saying. This is coming from a child. You know, there's a sense of, when a child makes a comment, it's there's no malice, right? It's sort of innocent. It's an innocent look at, and I think we've had a good time actually, because all the political parties at the end of the day, because we've also been around for so long. You know, we were created, the little girl was created in 1965. So looking at 50, 57, 58 years of, different governments coming in, and finally, everybody loves to be up on an Amal hoarding. There is a sense that you've kind of arrived if you're on a hoarding. And so I think we've had a good time with all kinds of celebrities, whether it's politicians, whether it's Bollywood characters, cricketers. They just love it. So I think this country is good for cartoons. And I think for the most part,
absolutely. You talked about hoardings. From an operations logistics standpoint, things have changed, right? I mean, you don't have those painters going up on scaffolding and doing all that. Just very briefly, can you tell us a little bit about how this outdoor thing, because Amul has been mainly on the outdoor side. So can you tell us a little bit?
So I think it's quite funny actually, because in the early days, before we had vinyl, before we had the whole sort of internet, your subject was fully dependent on the poor painter. So you would have this really thin sort of guy going up on scaffoldings, risking his life, trying to paint a hoarding while there were cars up and down. And we always knew whether the painter on the scaffolding was a fat guy or a thin guy, depending on how he painted the Amul girl. So if he was a fat guy, you always sense that little girl was slightly fatter than when she was not in. So he said, the painter is a thin guy, So I think we were a little open to interpretation, in the so what Jayant Rani didn't always necessarily translate as well on a hoarding. And we had to keep the hoardings quite simple, Unisa, no backgrounds. It was really, if it was, let us say, the girl talking to Sunny Gavaskar, it would just be Sunny Gavaskar and the girl. There would be nothing else, right? Now with vinyl, and now with doing it because of the technology available, I can have lords in the background, I can have crowds in the background, I can have the Indian flag in the background, I can start getting into detailing. And that is beautiful on a hoarding, because nothing, for the Amul ads, nothing quite looks as beautiful as it does on a 20 foot by 20 foot hoarding as you drive past. I mean, now one has to accept that most of it is on a, you sort of scroll up or down on a phone, right? But I think the brilliance of technology has taken the outdoor medium to another level, because what you see is what you get, basically.
Looking at the future, you two have created your own version of the modern common man, the common guy and the common girl, two cool characters, right? Can you share a little bit about those? And maybe that could give us a peep into the future of what the common man in the cartoons could be.
I think I'd like to hear Unisa's response to that first. I really feel, what does he feel? I really want to know how young people respond to cartoons. Are they as locked in? Do they respond with the same kind of, like in advertising, we say the greatness of an ad is when there's a brand conversation, right? And for us, every day an Amul ad on Twitter and on Facebook or Instagram has millions of responses. So we know immediately, Balaji, within 2 minutes of that hoarding going out, how people are responding to it. So how does it work for Unny? I wanted to know. Yeah.
I don't know about the young people's reaction to political cartoons and news cartoons, but one thing I can be sure of, everybody looks at the cartoon.
Yeah.
Especially any young person I know, will look at the cartoon, even when the person is too young to understand politics. That's the way we got into cartoons. The same thing happens. But today, the comic literacy of a young person is very high, even in India. So the kind of person who looks at my cartoon today is not necessarily a politics savvy guy. It's also a comic savvy guy.
Yeah.
Somebody who probably has even read a graphic novel or two.
Yeah.
You might be 17, 18. 17, 18, you would have read your Communist Manifesto and looked at the cartoon. Today, the guy has read Marjari Satrapi or Mouse, and he's looking at my cartoon. So I have to cater on a twofold basis. I have to satisfy his politics if he's political, or I have to provoke him politically. I also have to provoke him as a cartoonist would provoke a comic savvy reader. I can't look dated in my craft anymore.
Yeah.
I know the audience would be bursting with questions. Whoever answers this question gets the first opportunity to ask a question to the panelists.
That's quite a cartoon.
Yeah. And the question is about cartoon. Okay, now I can't see the audience. Anyway, my question is, I can hear you. So, in which Bollywood film of the 1950s was RK Laxman's cartoons featured? 1950s. It was a Bollywood film of the 1950s in which RK Laxman's cartoons were featured. There's a hand. Yeah. Absolutely right. Mr. and Mrs. 55. A big hand for Somnath Mukherjee. And thank you. And in fact, Gurudat's profession in the film was a cartoonist. Yes. She asked him, "Tum kya communist ho?" He says, "Nahi, main cartoonist hu." So, Somnath, you get the opportunity to ask the first question to the panelists, to Rahul or Unny sir.
Yeah. He was a cartoonist. Yeah, he started. No, he was in Free Press Journal. He was senior to Laxman. Yeah, when Laxman joined Free Press Journal, Free Press had two cartoonists. One was called Mr. Butt, who actually shifted from cartooning to hoteliering. And Bal Thackeray moved from cartoons to politics. But Thackeray continued to cartoon for his party and for his party papers.
Yeah. Next question. Do we have? Okay, there's one more gentleman out there as well. Okay. Yeah. Please. Can someone give him a mic? Okay, that's okay. I think we can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you. Yes. All of us are.
Excuse me.
Ajit Menon.
Sorry. I mixed up with the surnames. Anyhow. So why cartoons are missing? Is it cartoonists are not available, or everything is cartoon, or you don't dare to print a cartoon?
I think, cartoonists are available. Maybe the other point could be one of the reasons. It's very difficult to differentiate between a cartoon and a non-cartoon.
Yeah.
When people say that when your politicians turn into public personalities, turn into cartoons, how do you caricature them? They're already caricatured. But that's not the reason. The real reason is like this everywhere. I think that this is a temporary lull. Cartoons will come back into newspapers. There's a lot of cartooning happening on the web now, because some of the cartoonists have become, they've become independent. They don't want to work for one single paper. So they are working for, they have found a way to syndicate their work through the web, through the internet. So all of this will take a little time to settle down. And I think newspapers will have to use cartoons.
Conclude the newspapers, what the newspaper state today.
Yeah.
Previously, first the headlines used to be seen. Now 3 pages of advertisements, 1 page of, then in 7th or 8th page, you will find the newspaper headline, something happened in Ukraine or something like that.
Of course, we can carry on the discussion after this. So maybe we'll go to the next.
Thank you for the subject, because RK Laxman, I am hard for you.
Who isn't? All of us are a big fan of. Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, so in this age of trolling and section...
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see you.
In this age of trolling and section 66A, are you on the back foot? Are you wary of speaking your mind? Do you have a legal cell to process your cartoons?
The question is to me, obviously.
Both of you. Even the Amul ad can be quite contentious.
Yeah, anything can be contentious, because for forwarding an image received on the WhatsApp, a Jadavpur University professor got into trouble. So, I mean,
he's still fighting the case.
Yeah, anything can be seen as a cartoon. If you're so insecure, somebody laughs, you can say that the person is laughing at you. Nobody can. That's paranoia. The point is, 66A is, I think, has been struck down by the Supreme Court, mercifully. Though, as you said, some of the Supreme Court decisions don't percolate down. The lower courts still seem to take action when a police complaint is made or police suo motu proceeds against a cartoonist. But there's no way you can, I suppose, there are a couple of good judgments that have come to the help of cartoonists. One is from the Madras High Court. There's a judge called G.R. Swaminathan. He ruled that cartoonists have the right to ridicule. It's very significant. He said at the drop of a hat, you cannot proceed against a cartoonist for defamation, because the highest threshold of offense has to be used before you proceed against a cartoonist. He said in a democracy, cartooning is a must, and cartoons are meant to offend, and the cartoonist has a right to ridicule. It's a major difference. It has not been noticed. So this is one good thing that has happened in India in the last 5-6 years.
Excellent.
And also Justice Kaul on MF Hussain.
Excellent. That's a very good development. Yes, sir. Can you use a mic, sir? I think he's just.
Shankar's weekly days. From Shankar's weekly days, one has been following cartoonists. My question is to Mr. Unny. This is a succession of brilliant cartoonists, all belonging to one state. Now, I wonder, is there some kind of what is it? I find it very mysterious that Shankar, then Vijayan, then let's say Unny or everybody, Kutti, Abu. Is there something about the Malayali character? Raucous, raw, and what is it? It's been there in my mind all along. Being a son of a journalist myself and reading from the days of Shankar's Weekly and now not finding them. I don't find cartoons anymore in the newspapers. Bengali papers used to have brilliant cartoons, and these are two, of course, different questions. First one is that I want to know, is there anything special about the Malayali character that makes them such good cartoonists? Second is, why have the cartoons suddenly disappeared from Bengali papers and other language papers?
Yes, Unny, sir.
Two different questions.
Yeah, got that.
The first question, there is no clear answer. Abu is one person who came closest to a answer for this. He said high literacy, political literacy, and very low employment, high unemployment. I mean, a lot of jobless guys sitting around in tea shops and yapping. So there are verbal cartoons and then they become visual cartoons. I mean, there is politics in Kerala in the last 60, 70 years, especially in the first decades after independence. Very accelerative politics. Kerala saw a lot of social reform movements, a lot of radical left politics, welfareist, reformist politics, almost encapsulated into about 15, 20 years. It's a high pressure, accelerated kind of political movement. Ministries started falling by the quarter, every 2-3 months, governments are falling, lots of instability, lots of political activity. All this is good for cartooning. Bad news is good cartooning.
I think we can take...
The other question I can't answer because Bengal had great cartoonists. Bengal had great filmmakers. Bengal also had a cartoonist from Kerala, Kutti. Kutti was probably the best known cartoonist here at one time.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I think we can... is there a question? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't see. Yes. You can ask your question if you have the mic.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Masoom Sengupta from the Heritage Academy. This question is to Mr. DaCunha. So every time you've chosen a topic for an Amul ad, if you could give us like a breakdown as to the process that goes in, the kind of research, what are the things that you will and you will not do? And this is for the students. So there are a lot of advertising students sitting here with me. So it'll be great if we could just understand the process as to what goes in and the result is an Amul ad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and hi to all the students out there. So in principle, there are three of us who've been doing this now for the last almost 25, 26 years. The system has more or less stayed the same, which is that on Sunday night, on an average Sunday night or a Monday morning, we come up with what we think are the 7 or 8 crucial issues that will come up or have come up or are likely to come up for that 1 week. So let us say it's a Wimbledon final week. So we know that the Wimbledon finals will be an issue. We look to see what's happening in Bollywood. We look to see what's happening in world politics. We hope to see what's happening in, and we then sort of chart a plan as to uh, what we think is going to be quite important the next day, and what we think is in the offing but may blow up in everyone's face on the Friday. So it's literally a question of scheduling it and realizing that a certain topic cannot wait beyond, say, the Monday. So we brief our cartoonist, Jayant Rane, and he starts to work on it overnight. And we're good to go. I mean, today, from the moment we get an idea to the moment that hoarding goes out, it's a 6-hour process, which is why we're able to now generate, the internet has helped us to double the number of topics, because there's so much going on the internet that the average person wouldn't see. So every second every second topic will be called, it doesn't go up on a hoarding. It goes, so it can quickly, sort of get out there on the internet. So essentially it's a process of figuring out, number one, what is the topic? And the second thing is to figure out what is the angle we want to take. Because we always get our news from the newspapers, but the angle, what are people thinking? How is it, this new word called trending? What is trending exactly? Trending isn't just the topic. The trending is how are people feeling about it. So I'm waiting to know which way Kashmir Files goes. Because at the moment, it isn't merely a film. It's a political statement. Now, which way it goes, how, so I'm still studying it to know at what point can we do that Amal hoarding. Because now is not the time yet, because it's still, so I think a lot of, to answer your question, a lot of doing an Amal hoarding is also about navigation. Because there's no doubt that every single topic except for religion is grist for our mill and ripe for an Amal topic. But the main thing is, which way does that topic go? What is the Amul girl saying? That's our main thing. What is she saying? What is she wearing? What is her expression? Who is in the hoarding with her? All that sort of comes into play. So it's a lot of fun, actually.
Okay. Malawi, can we take the last question? Okay. Yes, madam. Yeah, you are. Absolutely.
So this question is very simple. So I have realized over the last 20 years, a huge amount of influence from, let's say, specifically East Asia and Southeast Asia in the world of comics, graphic novels, cartoons have started influencing India, especially during the last 15 years, I guess, because when I was in college, I started with Sandman. And before that, I used to go through RK Laxman's panels when I was a very young girl. And then, of course, I have been a fan of your panel as well. And then what happened was when I started reading these and started seeing this, I started seeing the similarities sometimes of artists when they are doing certain certain panels. And I can see the similarities. Over the last few years, what I'm noticing constantly is this trend of a lot of cartoonists to kind of move east, if I may say the word. Is that correct? And if that is the case, then what stance is there for the Amul girl to have that kind of influence in the future? Because for a very long time, the Amul girl has stayed more or less constant with a certain figure and a certain color scheme and a certain everything, with different topics. And all the topics keep on changing. I have realized that the topical part is always changing, but the girl remains the same. But will this be continued? Will there be more changes? And if so, then what is that?
No changes. No changes. Because the girl, the beauty about, I realized the more marketing companies and the more advertising agencies resort to what we call celebrity advertising, the more dangerous it's getting. Because today, the overuse of, say, a Bachchan, or the overuse of, say, a Ranveer Singh. Today, you're watching a television set, and within every break between an over, you've got 5 Akshay Kumar ads. And the point is, what happens when Akshay Kumar starts to dip? Have you based your entire brand property and your brand personality and your brand promise based on a film star? So I'm taking your question in a slightly different direction. I think it's lazy. I think it's not investing enough time, energy, effort on creating a property that will stand for your brand, and more importantly, live through ups and downs. It will live through all kinds of stuff. And more importantly, I think why cartooning for me is a great brand property to have for a product, is it's timeless. You know, the point is the Amul girl never needs to change because she'll always be 7 years old. You know, her hair will always be blue. She'll always have a polka dot dress. So I think that's the beauty, and she then becomes malleable because she can then put on Kareena Kapoor's costumes for a movie. She can wear the Indian cricket. She can wear the blue that Maithili Raj wears. So to answer your question, I don't think the girl will ever change, because that's, you know, I learned one thing years ago. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So yeah.
Excellent. Sure.
Laxman had a similar answer when he was asked, why do you keep this man like this? You're not changed this costume. He looks complete anachronistic. But he said, does the sky change?
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, I hope all of you enjoyed this session as much as I did. It's been very enlightening for me. Thank you, Mr. Unny. Thank you so much for coming all the way, Rahul. Really, really appreciate you joining in despite your heavy schedule and joining online. There have been more versions of your common people, like Lobo, the guy who fixes everything, or Natasha or Nats.
Yeah.
Newer version of the young girl. They have a different way of speaking. The lingo is different, right?
Yeah.
They don't speak the full word. They leave out the last syllable, right?
Yeah.
Obvious becomes obvio or something.
Obvio.
Okay, and I'll have to learn that language. I guess all of us have to learn that language. So, you have it? Okay. It'll be on screen? Okay, excellent. Oh, okay. So one thing is for sure, whether it's RK Laxman's common man who remains silent, or his wife who speaks all the time, or the Amul girl who's there with everyone and she's making a comment, or Lobo and the Nats, the new age people, or your own, you know, your politicians, business as usual. The common man will be heard. The common man will speak. And like Justice Ramanathan, who made this statement, Swaminathan, I'm sorry, I apologize, who made this statement, who empowered cartoonists and what they create, more power to the common man. I think that will remain forever.
Cartoons will stay. Stay as cartoons, and they will be liked only if it takes sides with the common man.
Absolutely. More power to the common man. Thanks to all of you. It's there. Oh, excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Unny sir. It's been a pleasure having you here. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you as well for joining in.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And thank you, Balaji, for conducting the session so well. Our next session also has an online panelist joining in. So we will need 5 minutes to set that up, please.